Okay. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yep, I can.
Yeah. Oh, always that unexpected technical difficulties the last time. Um, I don't know why. For some reason, Zoom didn't, or it had to update on my laptop and it wasn't updating. So
Yep,
we'll make do, right?
yeah, we have the same. We had the same when we were just starting the summit. So
Okay.
you can see my presentation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So
So
I'll just tell.
then, yeah, you just tell me when I need to switch, and I'll just be
Okay.
changing the slides.
Okay. So
Okay,
we're
so
ready to
first,
go.
yeah, let me just first introduce yourself. You pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So first of
Okay.
all, I wanted to welcome everyone to another day of Global Stars Basketball Summit, and we have another great speaker, Misha Kawai, head strength and conditioning coach, massage therapist, and also equipment manager for South Bay Lakers team. He'll talk a little bit more about his background, but I'm just really excited to see him here because that's what he's teaching is unbelievable and it's useful. So make sure you take notes.
Well, thank you
Now
for
it's
that
all on you.
introduction. Thanks for that introduction, Bossy. I really appreciate it. I appreciate this opportunity, and I really apologize for the delay, technical difficulties. But here we go. Let's get going. I'm really excited to talk about this. This is something that I truly feel passionate about, and it's kind of like my training philosophy. Not kind of in life as well as basketball, but let me talk about my background when you'll see why basketball is also so important to me because I am a basketball purist. That was pretty much my most dominant, the only sport I played dominantly throughout my life. The most, I've been more active with basketball than any other thing in my life. So, just going. We'll start with this first slide. It's such a meaningless slide. I just wanted to put out my little bit of a timeline. Um, as I talk, so that people might make a little more sense of what it is. But I am from Europe originally. I grew up in London. I'm half British, half American, half Hungarian, now American. But I grew up in London, and even though it's a soccer, football, crazy country, I just always wanted to play basketball. It was always a dream. It was always a dream to go to America, play college, which I tried to do. I did a little bit in the junior colleges, couple of colleges here and there, and then I went into coaching when that was no longer, playing was no longer going to be something that I could do or was really enjoying. I wanted to go into coaching. So I did a little bit here and there, some internships. And it wasn't until I started graduating university when I went into, some exercise science for my degree. And I also internship with strength and conditioning. I started really getting involved and liking that side of things. I started enjoying the sports science and physical side of things. And after that, working in that side of the world of personal training and eventually getting my, what I would call my big break in life is getting to work with the Lakers, first as a ball boy, which evolved into the equipment manager. And that allowed me to pick brains and learn the things I needed to have. Um, yeah, almost there. And then,
Okay.
I pursued these various different certifications and qualifications from massage therapy. And I've listed a couple of my passionate certifications or things that I studied in the bottom one, which sort of all dictated to my mindset today. So it's a very broad experience from I've had playing, skill development, experience, coaching to strength and conditioning to even massage therapy and more of this rehab minded, sort of whole holistic movement minded practice that I now do, and that's allowed me to sort of really think deeply of what we're doing with our training. So on to that next slide, as you will. What have I learned from my experiences? And so one thing is that, as we all know, injury rates are just rising. But the thing is, the dysfunction is staying consistent, in my opinion. And that's actually, even with the regular population, you kind of tend to see the same dysfunction. It's just the rate of injury or the severity just changes, whether it's an athlete or somebody that sits on the desk. But if we really want it to be as simple as possible, glutes and core, right? And a lot of us might have maybe even heard that before, that, oh, weak glutes and weak core. And that's actually as simple as we can put it for you. Yes. However, yeah, like I said, we're not we're not attacking that well enough. And more importantly, what I'm here to talk about it is we're not attacking it specifically enough. And then also we got more demand, more exposure, and early specialization these days. I appreciate the old school. I think the old school is definitely tough-minded. But I do think the new generation is going through, or at least a lot more emotional stress or mental stress because of what we're exposed to, internet and phones and all that, and what we think we need to be doing now. So, you know, it's just from what I'm seeing, there's just a lot more demand exposure and early specialization. And that, you know, obviously leads to more breakdown and injuries. The long season and not enough durability, you know, that season is just tough, man. You know, you gotta stay healthy to last the whole season. You know, it's a lot of games. College, you know, that tends to be all right. But once we even hit G League, which is 50 plus, it tends to really break guys down if their bodies are not prepared. So you got to be durable. You got to have strong legs. And then I put up a nice little quote that you will probably see again, and it's not the load that breaks you down. Oh, no, but don't. It's not the load that breaks you down. Sorry for the typo. It's the load you're not prepared for by Dr. Craig Lieberson. My apologies for that. It's not the load that breaks you down. So don't. It's the load you're not prepared for. It's as true a statement as it can be. Really just, you know, that's what I'm seeing is that, you know, the guys that are durable, you know, the great ones, even the top three of all time, MJ, Kobe, LeBron, you know, they all take care of their bodies. So that's one of the reasons they can last these seasons. But, you know, what I'm seeing across the board with a lot of these professional players is they don't quite take care enough of their bodies, especially in terms of what I'm talking about. And that leads to, like I said, a lot of breakdown. But again, more specifically, if we don't train and explore three-dimensional space well enough. So, you know, it's all good if you want to get strong legs, but I think it's paramount that we explore the space a little bit better. That shifting from side to side, lateralizing, which I'll use a word I'll use a lot today. That's a key missing thing. You know, strength is paramount, like I said, but you got to have ability to shift. And, you know, stretching is not the answer. Another thing, you know, guys, they think they're tight and they always try to stretch. But here's the thing, when you aren't strong enough, when you don't have enough awareness of your three-dimensional space, your body will naturally lock up and make you tighter. So, you know, stretching is not the answer. The answer really is you need to prepare yourself for more three-dimensional movements and having, you know, a good strong base, because that is what actually will allow your body to feel a lot more at ease. And then, you know, lack of diversity catches up to you. I think that's an important thing. You know, if you constantly are engaged in your pattern, think of this as philosophically almost. If you're constantly just doing the same thing, you know, it catches up to you, you know, whatever it is. So you want to have some diversity to your life and what you do, even as athletes. And one thing I want to say, so yeah, you know, athletes they're good at going, but bad at stopping. So, you know, just think of that in the philosophical scene. Like, they're really good at going, so that's not a knock against their explosive ability or their jumping ability, how fast they are, how, you know, quick, all that. But their ability to stop, manage, and change, and even if that's talking up here mentally as well as physically, that is often the problem. It kind of goes hand in hand, which is why it's sort of funny. So you want to be able to look at this as not as how good is this athlete able to go forward, but can he control that? That's a big key. And one thing we see is that athletes are really good at their skill, but they're usually poor or bad at movement skills or balances. So when we put them through movement screens, which I'm not a fan of movement screens, but, you know, they usually tend to suck at them. But that's also giving you a little indication of, well, you know, is he comfortable of his left leg as he is his right leg? Well, he injured his left leg, and he's always injuring his left leg. So, you know, this why movement screens, I'm not like I said, I'm not a big fan of them, but they do kind of tell us something. For me, the best movement screen are exercises, because that's where you really learn what an athlete tends to like and dislike. And that's the last point on the slide is, you know, this across the board, there's always just one good leg or no good leg. It's never two good legs, you know? You have like, yeah, my left leg is good. I'm always jumping up the left leg. Oh, my right leg's really bad. And, you know, I don't want to, you know, throw any people on the bus, but this year, I think we had a couple of guys who had double knee surgeries. So you got to be taking care of your legs. You know, you can't play a sport if you have two bad legs, which requires so much dynamic movement. And it's rare that you see it, an athlete, let's say, who can, you know, it can jump as well, not as well, but can easily jump and dunk off of his weak leg, you know, and he's even more explosive of his good leg. So that's kind of like what you would want to see, but we don't ever tend to see that. We'll tend to see a dominancy to one side, and we can go on to the next slide. So basically, as far as my so the title of my presentation, single leg stance. I know with basketball, it's probably very confusing. What are we talking about single leg stance? Okay, so why crown it? All right. So gait, which is basically the human walking pattern. It is by far the number one, or, you know, walking or running. It's the number one movement hierarchy that we're doing. As much as we are, you know, thinking jumping up and down for basketball, we are running up and down the court at a far higher volume, or even as you are in defense and changing direction. That is, you know, you're moving and you're spending time on one leg versus the other, which is why I put that nice little quote: 80% of walking and 100% of running is spent on one leg. That you must think to yourself how important that it is for one leg to be just as strong as the other. The next word, a little fancy word, contralateral reciprocation. So if you look at the top picture, that is basically what we mean by contralateral reciprocation, which is basically the gait pattern. If one leg goes forward, the opposite arm goes forward, and it's just back and forth like that. This is how our body was pretty much designed to move. And then below that, another little fancy word that some people might be aware of, some might not, is the fascial system. This is our connective tissue that run, and this is the blue lines. We have these sort of lines that go, connective tissue lines that go across the body, but the muscles that it sort of interconnects all tend to fire synergistically. So we are by nature designed to sort of move in this way. And if you look over to the list below, what you see, this contralateral reciprocation pattern of our fascial system ultimately allows us to run, jump, strike, which would be a punch or a kick, but you can even be a baseball strike, something like that. Throw, anything that you're throwing, climb, swim. All these major movement patterns that are also athletic patterns that we need are all governed by this contralateral opposition movement patterning, which is done by or aided by this fascial system. So, and ultimately, it does kind of come down to holding your weight over one leg, holding your weight over the other leg. Like I said, lateralization, this back, one side to side. Lateralization is ultimately forward progression. It's just what we are not good at both ways. We are trying to get both ways, but it is the true way of what we need to be doing. It's just we're not good enough at it. So you basically simplify it as a single leg stance, because that's how you want to attack. All right, my right leg's good. I'm good at that stance. Now we go to left leg. Are we good there? Now you want to go back to right leg, and in the end, you get this back and forth, what we could call pendular, if you think like a clock, pendulum, or oscillation is the scientific word, oscillation. This is the human body to its core. This is absolute natural aspects of human oscillation factor, back and forth. It is what we want to do. And so by attacking single leg stance, by prioritizing, you're basically covering your bases. And that's as simple as what I can say, is you're covering a lot of your bases. We can go on to the next slide. So understanding basketball and movement. So like I said, I spend my whole time with life as a sport, and in a non-biased opinion, I think is incredibly demanding, and probably one of the most demanding sports is out there, physically and skillfully. Think of this: you have to play offense and you have to play defense. Not all team sports require you to do that. and you need to be present at both ends or else you won't be very successful. There's heavy bouts of sprint, long bouts of cardio. So you're using both systems there. Explosiveness to the absolute max. I'll never forget, I once in college asked a high jump coach, hey, how do we jump higher? And he says, oh, I like my athletes to play basketball. Is the most, it's a sport just builds explosiveness, whether it's lateral forward, long distance up and down, or even quick short range to jumping. Just one of the most explosive sports out there. And the athletes, as we all know, are just the most explosive on this planet. Lots of loaded positions and postures, triple threat. You got to get low, right? Butt's got to be low, right? Defense, we all know you slap the floor, arms out. You got to be low. You need to be low to be successful. Even the best of the best, Michael Jordan, when he's dries, he got incredibly low to the floor. So, having that durability in the hips, reactivity, constantly reacting to different things, having the strength, whether it's the leg strength or the pushing and all that, immense skill and balance, and then lastly, a season that just doesn't allow you to rest enough. So it is incredibly tough. And so this is why we want to sort of respect our movement patterning and train it the right way. Okay. And so now to my next point of this is that basketball starts and restarts in a bilateral position, but never stays stagnant. So what I mean by that is, like I said, triple threat, 2 feet on the floor, hands catch the ball, or defense, 2 feet on the floor, and you're in your low butt position, okay? Let's say there's a quick action. Sure, you shift, you move, you gather your feet, and then you get right back down into your position. So that's why I say it starts and restarts in bilateral. But I think as important as that is in basketball, which I truly believe is important, I think defense is so important, and you cannot play defense unless you're down in the low position. However, as we just talked about movement being a hierarchy thing. If you cannot move from point A to point B, you are useless, and you have to get there efficiently. And then you have to get your butt down low and get in a good position. So that movement in between is so key. And if we're not planning for that, if we're not preparing for that, if your left leg is not as ready as your right leg, you're going to run into some trouble. And so then to the next point is whether it's a change of direction on defense or finding the open space on offense, we must shift. So then I have a few little pictures here. On the top one, we see Monte Ellis doing crossover. So there you go. He's loaded over one leg, and he's got to be able to obviously manage that. Steph Curry guarding him, who's not doing it. I think he's going to get crossed, to be honest. He's doing a poor cross step. But, if he done a little bit better of a cross step and then was able to get into that loaded position, probably would have had a better chance. That's an example of maybe he didn't have good enough footwork or stance, integration, explosive push out to get into the restart position. All right. And the one below, again, just more or less loading onto single stance activity. I don't actually know who the Cavs guy is, but he seems to have planted himself well, even though he's behind the defender. He's probably going to get beat, but there you go. That's a better cross step. He's loaded his weight over there. And as far as what's his name, Garcia, that's what I'm going to go into next, about how he's doing a bit of a change of direction move, and how for him, even though he's sort of dictating the direction he's going, he better be ready for those steps, and that's why I even put the logo, logo in this little hybrid thing with Kobe. Listen, the Jerry West logo, I like to bring it up, is that's some sort of natural thing that'll even happen when you change or go around somebody, your hips are going to shift. And so then it goes back to that's a sort of 3-dimensional single leg stance activity, change of direction happening. And it's just like, are you ready for that? Are your hips ready for that? That is such a key thing. And so that's the whole, and going to the next point is requiring and operating in 3-dimensional space with physics, which means gravity, going against gravity and against momentum. And so we get these little hip shifts and all that, and it might not necessarily be orthodox, but it's going to happen as you're going around people and all that. And basically, that is what I'm talking about. That is single leg stance activity. It's like, how well are we managing that? You know, and in terms of when it comes to training, we have to start thinking outside the box. And I mean box by not being like 2 feet, 2 hands, all the same, going at the same time. It should not reflect the majority of our training. We want to reflect this sort of single leg stance activity. And then going on to the last 3 points, which is basketball is a asymmetrical sport that leads to unilateral dominancy of our stance leg. And that's just sort of like the way it is, but I mean, we drive off of one leg. Very few of us learn to drive off of or explode off of right and left. And some coaches even discourage it because you're not going to be as fast and you're going to ruin your footwork. I think as a player, I did try and practice both, but I can never really recall driving past somebody exploding through my right leg. It would usually be my left, and I'm doing either straight or cross step. So that leads to unilateral explosive power. Even a 2-footed jump, like I'm a 2-footed jumper. I used to be 1-footed. A 2-footed jump is such a rolling, oscillating, contralaterally reciprocating pattern. You're spending more time on one leg than the other. So that's basically a load to explode. So you're basically favoring one a little bit more. So everything is a little bit asymmetrical. The hands. So yes, of course, we teach left hand uses all the time, but most of us tend to be one single hand dominant, and that's I don't know what you call it, but where it's lazy, or we're more of we're just feeding our natural tendencies. We don't tend to be good at both. So then you're sort of feeding that pattern of a single hand dominancy, and then the jump shot, obviously, as that's the one thing that you almost can't recreate unless you're highly ambidextrous. You're gonna have to load the ball comfortably over one leg, and it's going to feel natural. And if you do it the other way, it will just not feel as natural. I mean, I've practiced shooting with my left hand all the time. I can do it with my left hand. I cannot connect anything below my left hand to make it as seamless like my right hand. So point being is more than likely is that basketball is asymmetrical. So that's all the more reason is that why we want to explore and exploit both sides. And that's where true ambidexterity, it is rare, but it's ultimately acquired through use. So what I'm saying is, and even okay, fine, let's say somebody's genetically explosive. Sure, if they keep playing basketball, they will be more explosive. But what I'm saying is, when somebody's ambidexterity, when somebody has ambidexterity, right? It's not like, oh, they can do everything with both hands all the time. No, they do things with both hands all the time. They just naturally and are inclined to. Just most people are naturally inclined to not. So I think that's where part of our training, again, utilizing more of this pattern of side to side, using both sides evenly, is so important, just so that we really just explore this space on both sides, this hemisphere of left and right on both sides. And I skipped the point lateralization. I think that you guys get the picture. That's what I mean. It's just side to side. That's what lateralization is. Such an important word that I think should be remembered. But what we're meaning is side to side. And what we mean by side to side ultimately is going forward. Or you can even go change the direction. So it means a lot of things. It's just we're not, as you can see, we are not doing it as well as we want to be doing. And that is the problem. We can go to the next slide, Bossy, please. Thank you. Thanks for staying with me. Okay. All right, so
no
this
other
is
way.
Hopefully I'm a lot more clear than my last presentation I did. Okay, so this is now a little in science stuff, just not necessarily something anybody has to remember, just more appreciate. With everything that I've said, your body was also all designed to be asymmetrical, okay, by nature. All right, I got 2 images. Sorry, they're in kind of funky patterns, but this is the way I could get you to kind of see it the most. So on one, we have the brain, and we have brain function, how we have a left side, right side, and they are not the same. They do not operate the same, and they do not get used the same by hardly any individual. You have to be a very special individual to be using both sides of your brain equally. So that already leads to a lot of activity that's obviously not going to be equal. And also because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. So we already have that going on. You don't have to know too much about it, just understand that. Then we have that was number 2 on my post, even though that was the first picture. But then number 1, which is probably the more important, diaphragm and breathing. And if you look at that picture, if you don't take anything, if you just look at it just without even looking at the details, you'll notice that the right side is a little bit higher than the left. And those attachment thingies, without even looking too much, there's probably more going on down at the bottom on the right than there is the left. And that is natural. We have a right side diaphragm that is better supported, better positioned than the left. And that contributes to asymmetrical breathing. Part of that is influenced by our organ balance. We have more organs on the right than we have on the left. So that's also influencing our development. Stress versus rest. So, sure, there are people, we think we're in rest, but as you know, we always, engage in activities that aren't healthy. So if we're in, indoors all the time, on in front of screens all the time, or eating bad food or whatever, we aren't really at rest, even though we're on the couch and thinking of rest. And that's where some of this sort of holistic sort of mindset comes into play, where, rest is not, we're not always resting as well as we think we are. And we're stressing our systems a lot more. Stress is easy to be put on our systems. Just waking up and having your coffee, you're already amping up the stress of the system. But that's okay, because you just woke up. We can handle it. But as we go through the day and add more and more and more and more and more, you get tired. Your system gets tired. So stress versus rest is also imbalance. But as you can see, that sort of stems from even our brain function, because the left side brain is a lot more go, go, go. The left side brain also tends to be a lot more stress related, where a right side brain is a lot more rest related. So by nature, even because of what life requires us to do, we're going to be a lot more go than we are rest. I mean, that's natural. So it's just important to understand of how much we will, even by nature, will fall into asymmetrical just by living, being, and doing our lives, going on with our lives. And now, so enough of the details. Last two things is path of least resistance. Understand that is that basically, your brain's going to pick the path of least resistance when you want to complete a task. So as we develop and as we, neglect proper balance, let's say we're just a kid playing basketball, and you're not maybe training these sort of things, you're just trying to be good because you want to be good, so you're just running your sprints and you're doing your box jumps and whatnot. Your brain's going to pick the path of least resistance to get those tasks done. So you're going to basically develop a lot of these asymmetrical dominant patterns without you even realizing it, unless you really respect and tweak your training program to include other things. Path of least resistance is just basically why athletes cheat, or anybody cheats, and that's up to the trainer to modify things and slow it down a bit. And then because the mind, ultimately the mind grows faster than the body, right? The mind always wants to get it done. The muscles have to, it takes 6 weeks to put on muscle change or make it change the body. So you have to understand it takes the body a little bit of time, where the brain is just always thinking go, go, go. And then so improper training, as young adults and adolescents and all that, usually tends to lead to these unilateral dominant patterns. As athletes, we always tend to be good at one side, not the best, because not both, because we were never really taught to do that as well as we should have. And that's lateralization right there. Lateralization, the last point on the slide. I think one thing I want to say was with regards to this is again, going back to that lack of diversity. I think basketball as a skill, you got to do what you got to do. Outside of that, I think what are some other things we can do? What are the other conditioning drills or whatever that we can do that gets us out of those patterns, and maybe exploring a little bit of our left stance or left balance, right left hand usage, whatever it is. Disruption being the key, right? And think of that as a philosophical term. There's no disruption of what we're doing. And of course, yeah, you want to be good at basketball. You got to get your 1,000 jump shots a day. You got to go. But that's all go, go, go. And it's like, what have we done for our body to sort of disrupt that and take it over to the other side? And because as I've shown with this slide, is that by going and going, you tend to all shift to one side. And just think of just adding some variety. You know, I think it's just if the one thing you could take away from that is just add enough variety. We don't have enough exploration, or what I'm seeing with basketball players anyway, there's not enough exploration. There's not exploration of weak extremities. That leads to lateralization. And I think it's partially because sport is such a, you know, ride or die sport. I mean, like I said myself, I only played basketball, but it was only until later that I realized, like, soccer would be a really good thing I should have done on the side, as an example, for better footwork, balance, coordination, and all that. I personally really think soccer is very good for footwork and all that, but that is not even limited to just that. It could be other things. But again, concept of lateralization, what are we doing to exploit that? All right, that was a complex slide. We're through that. On to the next one. As we're getting through. Okay. So injuries. All right. So now that you have all that information, whether you know the details or not, it does not matter. All you need to understand is that we are naturally going to fall into sort of a dominant pattern. And so injuries and pain, or it starts with muscular imbalances or dominancy, which ultimately that's already starting to represent a lack of balance within your system. So let's just say if you're somebody that has a really overextended back and super tight quads, so your hips, pelvis is pointed forward, they call it the anterior pelvic tilt, which, you know, extra extension, you know, so you probably somebody driving through a lot of your quads more than your posterior chain, and you're probably extending with your back a lot. Probably they're going to use their back a lot more for core movements than they are actually their core. So that's already representing probably some dysfunctions already within their system. It's not just like, oh, he doesn't have enough core and posterior chain. That's already representing, you know, a lack of balance within the system. And so, which is why we generally want to train and well, I don't know what the correct term is, but train for balance or whatever. Basically train that you want equal balance between posterior chain, anterior chain. But what I'm saying is not only that, left and right, you know? And so injuries happen when there's a shift that the body was not prepared for. Again, lateralization. I'm saying that word over and over again, just because I want you guys to take it away, is so, okay, yeah, we've had the pain and all that from just muscular imbalances, but let's say the ball gets thrown over your head and you just make a shift. You just have to quickly shift your body because you just saw the ball, but your body was not ready to shift. That's when we sometimes get that ACL tear or whatnot. So being basically learning to load your weight over one leg is what lateralization becomes to. And if your leg is ready to accept that, you'll be able to project yourself back to your other step. And you know, that's like I said, this shift that the body's not prepared for is what we're talking about with lateralization. Is can you control and manage that? Which leads it to the third point of the slide, is managing tri-planar or 3D movement. So tri-planar is what we'd say 3D movements, and that's the top slide right there. Movement pretty much breaks down to those three things, but happening at once. You got sagittal, which is sort of this, you can consider forward and up and down. So that sort of kind of goes into two lines, right? Because essentially that's going forward, but it could also mean jump up and down. You got the horizontal, or it should be transverse, which is, you know, rotational, and then frontal, which is this sort of side-to-side lateral tilt, right? And then you have all three working at the same time, which I'll now point into my bottom slide. So there's just an example of one core exercise, a chop in a half kneeling position, kind of showing you how now this is an exercise where all three are working at one time. And that's kind of what I'm pointing to here, is that, you know, managing three-dimensional movement. Well, there's an exercise where you're properly managing three-dimensional movement, assuming that you're doing proper form and everything. Whereas, you know, if you take let's just say let's just say we're only doing, you know, barbell movements. You know, I'm not trying to bash on a barbell at all today. I'm just saying, let's just say that's where our staple of what we do is just barbell movements, back squats, deadlifts, bench press, military press, and some stuff. As you can see, we're not going to be incorporating all three planes well enough at the same time. Your rotational factor or horizontal transverse won't really be present. Frontal will be present, but that's the thing, is that you'll probably be favored to one side without even knowing it. And most of it tends to be more sagittal movements. And I think, again, like I said, not to break the bash on the barbell, but I think the mistakes made in training programming come down to the types of exercises we use. And the problem begins when we have too much bilateral movement training in our program. And as I said, bilateral is 2 feet, 2 hands going at the same time. And that often limits this three-dimensional patterning as much, okay? So that's kind of what I'm trying to influence here, or not even change. We'll see with the last slides of what I recommend for changing, but to start thinking of implementing more exercises where we explore our body's ability to shift. I mean, there's even with this chop, there's a shift happening there. There's a rotational shift. Now he might be half kneeling, but he's going into his his right hip. And he's shifting with abs, and he's also got left glute and got right adductors going. So that's lateralization and managing shift, okay? And not only that, you're going to go to the other side. So then we've got reciprocating and alternating shift patterning. And that's the part of the biggest takeaway problem, is that we do not have enough reciprocating and alternating movement patterning, in our training programming. So then go back, I've got to put that quote up again, although I butchered it again. It's like by Craig Levinson. It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the load you're not prepared for. So it's not the load that breaks you down, it's the load you're not prepared for.
I was like, okay. I was not sure if that's don't or no.
I think I'm pretty, I don't know how I messed that up, because I copied it from the other one. That's what happened. But, just now thinking of that, okay, thinking of that quote and everything that we kind of put together, this is the breakdown that is happening, is that we are not managing the three-dimensional movements. We are not prepared for the shift, and we are breaking down because we're probably good at one side, but not good at the other side. Or we might actually be both at best. We might be bad at both sides. And so, like I said, the too much bilateral strength training can lead to further imbalances. There's not enough alternating reciprocating movements to exploit the body's ability to shift. And then this last little point, and I think this is great, because it's like, you won't find your true center until you can truly center yourself over each leg. So as much as we want to do a bilateral squat, deadlift, all this, unless you've learned to center yourself over each leg, you will not be centered over both legs. You will have that bias pattern, and that's where go to the third from last point, which is too much bilateral strength training can further the imbalances. If your hips are imbalanced and you're shifted to one way, if you're not exploiting that lateralization, you're always going to be slightly shifted, even if you think your feet are even. That's going to be an imbalance push. So hopefully this sort of puts it together that, I just think that we're not preparing ourselves well enough for what we should be, what we're coming to handle. And that's whether you're a basketball player, other player of other sport, or an average Joe. I think these are things, key things I sort of found that are missing, because, the human body is durable. It is strong, but I just don't think we're preparing it the right way. And so we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so how can we fix this? The key point. So, all right. So, training for human function was basically what I'm trying to say. Pulled back up the blue fascial lines. This is the connective tissue, the synergistic model patterning of the human body. Just you don't have to memorize that, but just understand that we have these sort of crisscrossing multi-planar muscles running in chains that want to run in chains, and what are we training to make that better. So that's what I mean by train for human function. If you look at the blue, with the blue lines, the last two, so 4 and 5, that is an example of your front line and back line. I would say that gets exploited overly in our training patterns. We do that a lot. That's probably, just that's your forward and back. It's the other ones, the crisscross, the twisting, the shifting, the lateralization. That is kind of more of what I want to explore with a training program or implement with different exercises. So going beyond, barbell use, using a lot of dumbbell use, whether it's a lot of cable chop stuff, a lot of med ball stuff. We can do kettlebell stuff and do kettlebell in a staggered stance. If we have sandbag stuff, we can do sandbag swings. And so it really does not a right way, wrong way. It's more, what are you doing to be creative to explore these movement patterns? But then go back to remember, and that is remember the movement hierarchy, and the gait is number 1. And that is fueled by these patterns. These patterns will help you move forward. And moving forward ultimately will help you complete these athletic movements. So the more we will train that, the more we train, like I said, these different lines of synergistic patterns, then you will go, I think, to the third point. You will ultimately own lateralization, because that is lateralization, is going that side to side and being able to take your body to one side, being able to take your body to the other side, which, like I said, is ultimately forward progression. If you own lateralization, you will own forward movement. And that takes us to the next one, is that the human body was meant to be pendular. We are meant to oscillate. We're meant to go back and forth. What are we doing to give us that? I mean, sure, you could think of cardio running as doing that, but maybe again, if we haven't broken down some of these dominant patterns, we don't necessarily want to be doing that. But that's where maybe I do, for example, like swimming, because you're going to be working these fascial lines, and you're not on a 2-footed on the floor. You're actually in water, and you're using your arms more. It's an example. That's a back and forth activity. Lots of rhythmical breathing. I actually usually feel great after swimming, because I've gotten, so rhythmical. Or I'll just give you another example. That's when maybe, kettlebell stuff is really good, because that tends to be also very rhythmical and back and forth. And I just think don't take it for, literal back and forth. Just thinking of just being creative as a trainer or as a coach, the teacher. It is your job to be creative and always think of ways you can help your athlete. And I think the more you can understand that the body, like I said, to its core, is meant to go back and forth from its very function, where, like I said, stress and rest, I mean, that's back and forth. It's just we don't really do it well enough. And in a true sense, you would wake up, you'd have your coffee, go, that's stress, but then you'd take a rest in the middle of the day, maybe, meditate, sit on the beach, I don't know, walk in the park, that's your rest. But then you go back to work, then you go in again. I mean, that's an example of healthy, stress rest oscillation. It's just, are we doing that well enough? No, we're not. Just like I said, just it's something that you can think about, but understand that is natural for our body. And the more we exploit that, whether you want to say, okay, today we're going to do soccer kickups in between deadlift sets, or whether you say, oh no, today we're going to do all single leg stance work in a training. Just think of different ways we can reciprocate and alternate. Big thing right there. Reciprocate and alternate. That is the way of the human body. I sort of forgot these other pictures, but the bottom one shows your pendular, just to give you an example, this back and forth thinking of it. And then in the middle picture, we have tri-planar movement. And so that's basically, again, sort of that happening all at the same time. You start to realize that, yeah, that is the human body. It's going back and forth through as it's walking forward, or even as it's changing direction. It's going back and forth through these planes. But is it really going evenly? Are you, once you're stuck to the right, if you don't take a full enough, big enough step, you only go halfway to the left. But then let's say your left is really powerful and takes a big step and pushes you all the way to the right. Then again, you have that half step and takes you halfway to the left. That's the problem. That's not true reciprocation, that's not true alternation. And it is our job, again, as trainers, or what I would like to say as coaches, to try and fix that. Especially because they're going into basketball, which is all going to be jumping off of one leg and pushing off of one leg and loading yourself off of one leg. Like I said, a jump shot, you're going to hold with your right hand, elbow underneath the ball, right? Well, you're kind of over your right leg, even though you're probably jumping with your left, you're shifting over your right. And I'm not really going to get into the details of biomechanics, but you guys get what I'm saying, is that, you know, we don't have the reciprocation alternating patterning enough. And then the last thing is disrupt the dominancy, you know, is disrupt the dominancy. It's too easy to be dominant in what we do, and especially with sport, which requires so much focus, so much practice, so much dedication, so much passion and love. There's dominancy to that, and like I said, that will catch up to you. So if we can find ways to disrupt that, that's going to do our body a good service. You know, the body will react a lot better than constantly pushing forward, which will be dominant to one side. So disrupt the dominancy. We can go to the next slide. We got just a couple more slides and we'll be done. So this is what I was saying earlier. What do we change? Because I think this is a really important one. Because I mean, let's just say, you know, your strength coach, you have your ways, and it's just like, whoa, I mean, you're telling me single leg stance is so important, but you know, I have these exercises that made me really strong, and I had these exercises that made my athletes strong. You know, what do you want me to change here? And that's the thing. I don't necessarily want to change too much, because I mean, I have what I do, but I can't say that, you know, this is the blueprint what everybody does. I just have principles that I follow, and then I have my exercises that I think will fulfill those principles. But I think the important thing are the principles, not necessarily the exercises. And so that's why, you know, if you're somebody, going back to the barbell, because I am personally, I love my deadlifts, love my military presses. But as far as barbell use, that usually tends to be it. I don't tend to use the barbell much. I don't do squats as much. I'll do squats with other things. And I do bench with dumbbells a lot more. And all my leg work usually tends to be, like I said, single leg work. And I keep that limited. So, you know, and that's just me. But I have all these other things that I'm trying to attack and target. So if you're somebody that loves to do squats and more of these power lifts, or even Olympic lifts, which, you know, like I said, I don't do much anymore. I think you should still be able to do that, but we want to make a couple of changes. All right. And we want to do a couple of these changes to prepare your body to be able to handle these things, these bilateral patterns, based on what we know. So number one is to implement proper warm-up strategies to activate our awareness of three-dimensional space. So I'm trying to be as fancy with that. And that's not just warm up your left leg or left glute, warm up your right glute. Is, you know, the three-dimensional space. It's like how well are we even handling the shift to the left? You know, some of that can come down to balance as well as actual awareness, like visual awareness. You know, being able to, like, you know, where you're catching things, balancing on one leg, to doing skills on, you know, basketball skills maybe on one leg, whether it's dribbling or not, or actual, you know, exercises, whatever it is. You know, you want to implement the strategies that are exploring that keyword lateralization and awareness of three-dimensional space, side to side. Okay. Fewer bilateral positions when program strength training. So I did say, you know, if you want to do all that, do it, but you're going to need to break it down, and you're going to need more unilateral strength training patterns if you want to disrupt the dominancy. Okay. So, and then I'll go into the third point even, is it basically comes down to more regressed and modified positions to disrupt that dominancy. The half kneeling is a great one. That was in that two slides before, with that half, there's a chop variation. Half kneeling position is great for strength movements, core movements, whether it's rotational chops or tosses with med ball or just lifting weights. That's reciprocating, alternating gait pattern. We have staggered stance, positions, which are highly effective. That's you loading your weight over one leg versus the other. Not necessarily using machine weights that seat you and lock your feet in, but even bilateral kneeling is better sometimes in just terms of taking the quads out of the equation and getting you to use your hips more. But I would say the more important would be half kneeling positions, staggered stance positions, or sometimes the single leg positions. But that's just more of the unilateral strength training, more of that single leg or single dumbbell. Even if you got two arms going one at the same time, dumbbells are really good in just keeping both arms in check. However, when it comes to bench press, I even like to do a lot of alternating movements, because again, that is what we are naturally doing. And if we're throwing something with max power, we're going to be using one arm with this sort of wind up swing, not two. So that's another reason why I like to do unilateral strength training patterns a little bit more than bilateral. A little, side topic, but we picked the bilateral two at the same time because it allows us to push more weight. When we push more weight, we build more force, strength, force production, which leads to more better strength. And because that's what we're, the bare basics of athlete strength and conditioning is you got to get athletes stronger. Stronger is a broad word, though, and while the bilateral will certainly do that, and it is important, like I said, I think deadlifts are very key, definitely key for even what we're trying to achieve here. However, it's still the 2 feet going at the same time, and that's not the natural body, how the body is going to be used. So just the more we can, like I said, there's my key time. Aim for muscular balance. And what I mean by that is, in your training program, is it should just be about the force gains. It should be about, okay, are we balanced throughout? We got enough hips, we got enough hamstrings, quads all working together, calves, cool. And then obviously upper body, I usually like to go with a push-pull horizontal, push-pull vertical, and then you got your core patterns. So just aiming to balance out the body. And the more you're doing that, the more you're going to be using unilateral strength training patterns. And the more you're going to be doing that, the more you're going to be, going back and forth, lateralization. And then the last thing of that is, and be willing to try new things, activities with your weak hand, weak leg to test the stability of coordination. And, those are little fun games you can put in. Like I said, I'm a fan of soccer kick-ups. I think they are actually really valuable to just do. First versus using your left leg, then using your right leg. Just that the essence of balancing on one leg and using the other leg for the skill and then switching, I think that's great. But even if it's something with tennis balls, juggling or different stuff, things like that, be careful. I would say be careful what other sport you would pick up, because again, sports were invented just because somebody thought of a game and it was just like, oh, this is cool, this works, right? But they didn't realize that they invented the skill off of what the body's naturally asymmetrically designed to do. So a lot of sports skills will often be unilateral, dominant to one side. It is up to us to unnaturally use both sides, because naturally we will not want to be doing that. And the more we can, whether it's picking up a soccer ball, doing that, or I don't know, golfing swinging both ways. We might not be very good at it, but just tweaking, playing with it, and that's something that's even been proven in science, is that when you use your weak hand, you'll automatically make your dominant hand a little bit better just by going that back and forth awareness. And so, I think those are some little things. Again, I don't want to say what the right thing, wrong thing is, but just again, trying some new things, new activities that disrupt the dominancy, get you shifting side to side. This is basically what we're trying to do here. Is again, don't be so bilateral. I know strength and force is very important, and you will definitely need to get people's athletes stronger to survive life and athletics. But if you're not respecting some of these other things, you're going to run into some problems. And then, so we'll go on to the last slide, which is the takeaway message of that is, like I said, humans are meant to oscillate. Humans were meant to go back and forward throughout whatever they do, their life cycle and everything they do. And to be honest, even if you think about it, that's the basketball game, right? I mean, it's offense, defense, it's back and forth, it's point for point, you know? I mean, blowouts, of course they happen, but for the most part of the game, it's just this back and forth oscillation that you're fighting, that you hope to be on the winning end. So that's a philosophical way to think of that, is that this is so natural, and I've probably repeated myself over and over again, but that's just because when you look around a gym, any gym, or even some strength and conditioning gyms, I don't want to bash strength and conditioning, but I think we just see an overuse of the bilateral pattern, or whether that comes down to even using cardio machines, which I'm not a fan of. It kind of locks you in, even though you're going one leg at a time, kind of locks you in. Even if you're on a bike, that's locked you in, stair climb or whatnot. You know, I think it's a lot of that just sort of locks you in, is that, you know, if you don't own three-dimensional movement, you won't own. If you want to own three-dimensional movement, you must own single leg stance, and that is key. And three-dimensional movement is basically how we have to function through life, even more so as a basketball player, because that, I think, basketball is one of the how can I say it? It's three-dimensional movement to the supreme. I mean, you're talking about, you put it in this box, this bouncy ball, and it's going all over the place. And you got to move around all over the place and back and forth, back and forth. Sure, you do that in soccer, but not everybody's playing offense and not everybody's playing defense. No, I'm not trying to take anything away. I'm just saying, for what basketball players have to be prepared for, the speed of which they're going. That's what I'm saying, is that three-dimensional movement, this is mastery that you must be prepared for. And so therefore you must own your single leg stance if you want to be ready to change direction, explore open space, Euro step, gather, go up and dunk, land, run back on defense, you name it, you know. You must own lateralization. That is basically key. Every reaction will ultimately be a lateralization. You know, whether it's the defense, you guarding the ball and the man makes a move to one way, you got to lateralize yourself to that way, and you better be ready to break and react to the next direction. The ball being skipped over, the turnover and going on offense. Just there's all these happenings of lateralization, which, like I said, as much as the basketball world is taught to be in triple threat stance and taught to be defense but low, you will constantly be lateralizing throughout the sport, and that's why you better be ready for every bit of that's going to come your way. And the way you do that is, like I said, contralateral reciprocation is movement, and that is the opposition pattern. The more we train that, the more we kind of get in tune with that, the more we get that one weak side as good as that bad side, you're going to tune your body up and prepare it for a lot better than if you obviously do not just focus only on the two foot, two hands at the same time, which feeds your dominant patterns. Remember, the gait is king. That is the most important thing we're doing. That is running. Running is what we do. Spending our time on one leg is what we do. That is contralateral reciprocation. So that is why it is so important to tie these all together, because ultimately, and that's what the last point is you're going to prepare your body for performance. Performance being life, performance being handling gravity, physics, momentum, and then the rules of the game, whether it's the rules of life or you're playing a basketball game, which is, like I said, very intense, very fast, very explosive, ball going all over the place. And the problem is just so many of these kids today are they're very just locked up in their patterns. You know, they've probably had some conditioning training, but usually it's not balanced. They're not good. They don't own both single leg stances, and so therefore they don't own their three-dimensional movement well. They become lateralized to one side. They develop muscular imbalances, at least a lot of chronic knee pain, a lot of chronic back pain. Sometimes that being the limiting factor to their playing is just simple pain, not even an actual impact injury. But then we do have an impact injury. Maybe it's a bad landing or a twist. I'll never even forget, Jimmy Butler's meniscus tear. I don't know. I think he was with it was Minnesota. Yeah, it was good old Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, I think he literally just shifted his body. He didn't even take a step. He just shifted his body, and then he collapsed to the floor holding his knee. Freak accident, but it just shows you how important it is for us to handle that. It shows you how we must be able to shift. We must be able to oscillate back and forth because that is natural. Own a single leg stance because that's how we'll do it. And when you do that, you'll have a better awareness of your three-dimensional movement, which is basically what life is throwing at you. It's just we do not tend to respect that. We're very too tunnel visioned, which is obviously how we attack our goals usually, is just to be tunnel visioned. And then we end up missing a lot of what's around us. That's a little bit more the philosophical way to look at it. But hopefully from this presentation, you can sort of just take away that, we should prepare the body for what it needs to do. We can still keep a lot of our core exercises, but I think a little more exercise variation is important, and especially targeting lateralization and three-dimensional movement, the exploration of shifting and whatnot. And as I explained, there's ways you could do that, whether you use kettlebell stuff, lots of kettlebell variations, not necessarily the 2-foot swings, but lots of different variations of staggered and whatnot. You've got med ball stuff. You've got lateral chop stuff, cable chop stuff, lots of variations with that. Use a lot of dumbbells, more so than barbells. Attack your heavy lifts, but I think you should do lots of supplementary single leg stance training. And I found with my athletes, even though we don't do deadlifts religiously every week, although I almost try to get it at least every 2 weeks, if not routinely, we're still able to make gains with their deadlifts, even though we did tons of single leg stance work. But ultimately, that was the key, because time and time again, you could just see the athlete was really good at one, but not good at the other. And that goes to that first point when I was just like, there's always one good leg or no good leg, but never two good legs. So maybe I should have put that as the last point to conclude is I think, if you can train and get yourself two good legs individually, I think you'll be in a good place. That nothing else that you can do. Injuries will happen when they happen. The game is rough. The season rough. But if you can get two good legs, bounce, shifting, hold yourself. I'm good here. I'm good there. Maybe with skill development wise, make sure you're finishing off of both legs. You don't have to dunk off your weak leg, but if you can maybe once in a while get up there a little bit, that'd be good. I think that'd be, that's what all you can really do is just explore and exploit, the lateralization. Your dominant hand is going to be a dominant hand on your shot, but what are you disrupt your dominancy? And I think you'll see that your body will react a really good way. And that's all I got time for. That's it.
That's the time, I guess, that my question comes out. So I wanted to ask, you talking about the unilateral training and how important it is to incorporate it during the workouts. Do you think players can benefit if they take bilateral training out completely?
No, I don't think completely is good. And like I said, that's where deadlift for me, it's funny because I just spent this hour and 15 talking about single extends, but I still think a deadlift is so important, and you're making so much connection of power to your body. It's just remember, like even just think as a child, as a baby, you learn crawling, rolling, all that. Then you learn to squat and stand up. What happens next? They go forward, and that is the next thing we got to do is we go forward and we go wherever our mind takes us. And that's the beauty. I guess the vision in mind is what the next thing we could really go dive deep into. And that's what it all comes down to. What's telling us to move here and what's telling us to move here? In this case, it's the game of basketball, whether it's reacting to defense or making a play on offense. we need to be prepared for that. However, you're still going to, like I said, build force you're going to build force the best way if you have the most players pushing the weight. So that's why you're going to need 2 feet to push heavier weight. It's just, you're going to I think mixing it up is the more important thing. And I just don't see enough mixing.
So if we talk about adding bilateral training to it, would you go deadlifts and the rest would be unilateral, or you would still want more variety on bilateral?
So I actually think deadlifts that's like a top king movement. That's a big. We'll call it not king because, but we'll call it a big daddy movement. All right, we'll call it a big daddy movement because you gotta have your deadlift down. So if you can, I think you should save a big daddy movement maybe beginning of the week, and that's actually kind of what we did. It was a Monday thing. We would play on Saturdays, so we would have Sundays off, and then Monday, would be a fresh day, and guys, you'd be wanting to get at it in the gym. So that would be perfect time to maybe get a big raw lift, and plus deadlifts got a lot of neurological benefits, postural benefits. If done the right way, it will reset your body a lot better. So that's why I kind of favor deadlifts. The problem is squat, depending how it's done, or what kind of weight we're doing, we could be putting a little bit more stress on the body, which is why I don't necessarily pick squats. But deadlift, as a like I said, a big daddy movement, that's going to be done beginning of the week, and then throughout the week, I'll do lots of different unilateral training and all that. Or even, let's just say it's a day after a game, and or I don't know, they've had something heavy before, whether it's a heavy practice day. Still a good time to do unilateral training, I would say, because even then, if you're trying to build force production, which is what we're doing with deadlifts, you want to save that for when you're fresh anyway. But if you're fatigued, I think that's even more important to then, focus on the single leg, because when you're fatigued in a game and you take that step, that single leg better be ready for the weight and the momentum you throw at it. So, I would just say, just keeping a variety of more unilateral, but have your bilateral consistently. Just make it like a beginning of the week thing, or end of the week, just whatever you choose to program.
Got it. And we have a question. So that's the coach from Seska Youth Academy. He's saying, you told about other sports like swimming and soccer. How long can you use the tools of these sports, and not to get to the adaptation, but energetically and biomechanically, one time in a week or one time a month?
So, obviously, it's going to have to be done off season, because we all know basketball is so in demand. And I think it's tough to say what the right or wrong answer is, because it also depends on the athlete. Because let's just say it's a lazy athlete, they might not even be doing their strength training enough times a week, and then we'll probably should get one off day of whatever playtime. But then you might have your type A personality athlete who's gonna probably overdo it, right? He's probably already done 5 training sessions that week, and now he wants to go swimming, and then on his rest day he's gonna try and go kick a soccer ball. So that's where you kind of have to modify it depending on your athlete's personality type and who they are, what they need. The funny thing is, I think actually, and maybe the correct answer is maybe just have a 1 day a week, because maybe for the lazy guy, the 1 day a week might be enough. And maybe for the type A personality, the 1 day a week might just be enough. Maybe you want them to actually rest on the other day and on the second rest day of the week to do this activity. I don't think so much about the adaptation, because everything's muscle memory, everything's sport specific. This is going to sound controversial, but working out has nothing to do with competition. And you know why I say that? Let me tell you guys why. Is just look at the current heavyweight boxing champion of the world, Tyson Fury. I mean, in his last fight, he absolutely dominated. But physically, he's doing currently exercise workouts every day during this quarantine period. He does these boot camp stuff, and you looking at him, you would never tell this guy is the champion of the world of boxing. Whereas the guy he beat, Deontay Wilder, is an absolute physical specimen, a former football player. He'd probably crush tons of weightlifting workouts, but who is the better boxer? And that's what I'm saying, is that everything at the end of the day is sport specific. Tyson Fury's a born and bred boxer from his parents, so it is in his blood, and that's why he's so good at it, despite his physical appearance, where he is a bit of a fat boy. He'll tell you himself. Deontay Wilder, it's physical specimen. He has his attributes, but it's just what we do is what we become good at, and that's where what I wanted to take away with all this is like, utilize training to make yourself better overall. But at the end of the day, where you spend your time, whether it's you're a soccer player or basketball player, that's what's gonna drive you neurologically. You just want to be ready to adapt, change, lateralize. Okay. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's about the benefits of doing soccer training or swimming. It's more about just giving yourself something to change, giving your body something new to do and not be so stuck in the pattern. But as far as actual performance, nothing will ever take away from competition. It's competition's competition.
Got it. And I actually have one more question. What are your top 3 exercises that you love using on the road when you don't have a lot of equipment?
Ooh, on the road. Okay. Number one has got to be the sideline hip bridge, which is basically you're in a hip bridge position, side plank, but your knees are bent. We've done this before. Your bottom knee and shin are on the floor, and you're basically lifting hips up and forward. It's basically like a single leg RDL, but in a sideline position, regressed. So it's going to load you into your hip a lot more, isolate the hip, and it's going to get a good obliques going as well. So great for lateral movement. That's probably the very beginning of lateralization. That definitely won't save you, but it's the start, because then you have an arm holding yourself. So then maybe that gets your shoulder stability going, or if you're pushing up against the defender, you've got your obliques going. So now you've got your core structure going, and then you got your hip working with the leg to stabilize. So that's a whole lateral line there. That would be number one. Number two. Number two, well, I would say these are exercises or position. What was the question again? Exercises, right? On the road?
Yeah, exercise.
Then I would say because dumbbells don't tend to be too heavy in weight, I like to do a row, but in a different position. This is, of course, we'll do like a bent over dumbbell row, like you would normally do with a bench, but you're going to put the same side knee on the bench. So I know this is really complicated, and I cannot quite show you.
Out how to call it. It can be bird dog.
Yeah, exactly. Dog. And I don't know if you can see me. You can't really. But basically, I'm going to have the same side knee on as I row, and the other leg is extended in the back. So now you're in a gait running position, or what looks like gait running position, while you row. And that's actually kind of what's happening as you're sprinting. One arm's driving back as the other leg's driving up. So that's just a good core coordination, glute activation, synchronization, while you're doing some strength, right? And also it's tuning the body up for running, which is what they're about to do. So that's number two. And number three, I guess, would be some kind of staggered stance chop, or if there's no cables, we'll use a band. So that where basically they have one leg forward, one leg back, their weight over that one leg. And as long as you're kind of chopping across, you're going to engage those obliques. You're going to engage that adductor of the leg. You're ultimately shifting yourself over. We're actually working what they call the anterior oblique swing fascial system, which is basically the forward crisscross of obliques working with adductors, helping forward momentum. That's basically what we're working there. With the bird dog row, we're working your posterior oblique system. So that's the X system that runs across your back of your lat, connecting to your glute, which has connective tissue, very nicely helping it there, very vital for sprinting. And then the sideline is basically your lateral line system, which is your lateral line of fascia. So there you go. There's 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, all dedicated to 3 sort of movement patterning chains that, again, are designed for human function.
Misha, I can't thank you enough for your time. This basically 1 hour and 15 minutes just flew by like that. So
yeah, like
hopefully
I got some practice this time. It was a lot better than like I said, I did a seminar last time and I went way too deep and way too complex. And I think this time I was able to sort of make it a little simpler, but also give a detailed message I think people can actually take something away. Hopefully people can take away from.
Yeah, for sure they will. And I know you're also pretty responsive on social media. I even had one of the Russian players who I was trying to help to get into college like 7 years ago. He told me that he got in touch with you 2 years ago or something like that he had back pain, and you sent him like long message explaining. He's like, man, if you see him, just say hello and thank you, because that was priceless to me. So can you tell me how people can reach out to you in case they have questions?
Sure. Instagram is probably I'm most active on Instagram, which is as it's on the posting, but we'll say Big Mish, BIGMISH _ and it's not movement but MVMNT. So movement abbreviated, Big Mish _ movement. Otherwise I do have a YouTube page which it's Big Mish Movement written out, BIG space MISH space movement written out. I don't have a URL, personalized URL yet, but if you just search Big Mish Movement, I should come up on YouTube, and I'm happy to answer things from there. Those are easy places where I can refer you guys to links or exercises, because that's the thing. Some of this is actually specific. Like I tried not to get specific in the exercises, but if I had to give you guys a little secret, to be honest, yeah, there's a lot of specific exercises, and that's where I'm willing to show. If you guys ask me, and I'll show you like which exercise I really mean when I say to attack lateralization and whatnot. But yeah, just follow me there, because that's what I'm trying to do, is just basically show what we should be doing and how we should be training to maximize human movement.
And I also added the link to your YouTube in the chat box in case somebody needs it.
Perfect.
And I would highly recommend check it out because there are plenty of stuff. And actually, we have one question from B. Walsh. So on different subject, how can coaches make your job as easy and effective as possible? And thanks, Misha. Means miss seeing you.
Is he directing that specifically to me?
Yep.
Oh man, no, we're such a family. In general. Okay. I got you. I thought he was. I thought he was. Yeah, making me up.
Yeah.
No. Okay. In general,
basketball coaches can make your job as strength coach as easy as effective as possible. I think that's the question.
Okay. Thinking of this, because here I'm such a believer of integration. And actually in South Bay, it's been nothing but the best. We are so integrated. We all talk as coaches. I feel the coaches do really believe in what I do, and therefore, they have my back. Whereas I can see how in some teams it's almost like sports performance or sports medicine is like separate from, you know, coaching. So I think what's really important is, first of all, they understand that what strength coach is doing is important, but then kind of like why this whole presentation was so why I was so really happy about doing this, because okay, what if I can communicate this to a language where a basketball coach can understand? They don't have to understand the specifics and details, but if you can just understand the basics of what I've tried to say here, I think you can already help the situation. Because here's the thing, players are, like I said, they're gonna be fall into their dominant patterns. The more we can exploit these left and right hemispheres and left and right skill sets, you know, the non-dominancy, disrupt the dominancy, the more we can do that together as coaches, the better it will be. Because remember, by nature, the human body will be dominant to one side, whether that's coming to your brain function, breathing, to what you're designed to do, what you're trusting yourself to do. It is rare that we are good at both sides. So my job is to get the body physically prepared as much as we can do, activate, and awareness. Okay, cool. After that, it's a whole new world out there. When even then, again, reactivity wins, and you know, if they're really good at unstoppable going to their right, they should probably keep going to their right. But if we as skilled coaches can, you know, implement, you know, more left hand stuff, more left hand finishes, or bad leg jumps with the finishes. You know, just thinking about what I've said here, even thinking about the concept of human lateralization and what we need to do and explore with 3D movement. Like I said, there is no right and wrong way, but if we can understand that the body needs to do this but wants to do this, I think we can do a training program where we can maybe help the athlete, you know, feel a little bit more of this left hemisphere than not feeling at all, because all they're doing is just shifting this way. I don't know if that's a specific answer, and maybe I've waffled on a little too long. I just think it's just important just to understand the body, and if you understand the body, you know, it's easy to work together, you know. Specifically, sure, activation exercises, whatnot, but there is no right and wrong way. At the end of the day, you gotta work with the body, and the body is meant to do certain things. So, you know, work with it.
Great. Thank you very much for your answer, Mish. And again, thank you for your time, and thank you to all the people who tuned in. I just wanted to say again, in case you missed it or you came late, we will be uploading it to YouTube a little bit later. And since you've registered, since you entered this conference, we'll be sending out the email where you'll get the links to all the YouTube presentations that we already had. And one more thing I wanted to say is that I'm really excited for Tuesday. That's going to be one of our last speakers, and Tuesday is going to be a question and answer session with Coach George Carl. And I'm really excited. And anyone who's a basketball coach here on the call, I highly recommend joining. So looking forward to see you there.
Thanks so much, Basi. I really appreciate this opportunity. I really hope that somebody learned something out there and got to take something away, whether you're a basketball coach or strength coach. It doesn't matter. I think the important thing is to understand this body, and I hope I did something there. So thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, you too. Take care, everyone. Reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.